Good morning, everybody. I'm Javier Fernandez. I'm the director for the Center for Marble in the region of Murcia. And well, I'll be introducing this international seminar. This is a project about calculation methodologies for CO2 emissions in all construction projects, as well as maintenance and life cycle of the whole of the life cycle of the building, which is very important these days, with the new environmental regulations which are being implemented. And this is very much related to BREEAM, which is very much in fashion. This is a project which is financed by the Erasmus program. It is a K2 strategic actions in the field of higher education. And I would also like to talk about the different partners of the project, which are the University of Seville on one hand, TMAD, Technological Center in Italy, Technological Center for Ceramics and Glass in Portugal, the University in Transylvania of Brasov, and the Romanian Green Building Council. We're also going to have three architectural firms: JTG Architects, OX Architects, and Bonsai Architects with Puliopis and Eva Chacon. I hope this is very useful for all of us, and that we will learn a lot and make the most of our time here. I'll give the floor to David, who is going to explain what's going to happen today. Thank you. Well, I simply wanted to say that the first half of the seminar is centered on the project. How are we going to develop which is started with this project, of course. And this is one of the first international seminars that are going to take place throughout Europe. There's going to be a coffee break about 11:15. And after that, we'll have the different presentations of the different architectural firms, because we thought it was useful for us to have experienced architects here with us, and they could explain their successes and their particular cases. So basically that's that, and I hope you enjoy the seminar, and I'll give the floor to Jaime Solis, the project coordinator. He's going to explain in general what the OERCO2 is about.
Well, today here in Murcia, a city that brings me good memories, because my father was born here, we're going to try to explain this project that started 2 months ago. This is our first meeting to be able to make an analysis of the possible impact of building materials or construction materials, and how they can be related throughout the life cycle of buildings. As Javier mentioned, and I think that's something important, is to say that this is an Erasmus Plus project which is oriented towards teaching and knowledge transfer, and therefore one of the obligations of the project is to develop knowledge. Is the knowledge that is developed within the project to be transferred to the educational sector. We're talking about higher education, mainly universities, but also to transfer that knowledge to professionals. So according to the European Union, these projects, the results of these projects also have to be transferred to professionals. When you signed the entry, you were asked if you were professionals or you came from university. In this first presentation, this is a project which is called Online Educational Project. This is a platform, an educational platform. The aim is to develop an online platform for the project in order to carry out an innovative research of building materials throughout their life. So we are going to research on the impact of time on materials and how that can be transferred to the different sectors. This is an Erasmus Plus, K2 Erasmus Plus project. We were assigned this project in the field of higher education, and at the moment the EU wants to carry out innovative projects in the field of the Erasmus Plus program, so that we can develop models that the European Union considers that can be at the front of knowledge. Basically, our work is to research the environmental impact of materials, that is, which tools can be developed or can be found in the European Union, and specifically in the countries of the different project partners, and what the CO2 emissions are in the different processes to get the building materials. This analysis is very different depending on what we want to analyze, and that's why we're going to share our experiences. These are the main objectives of the project. We have to develop an online platform to transfer that knowledge, and where we will upload all the different slides so that you can have a look at them. We will have to develop in that online platform that is part of this European project. We're going to develop an interactive tool for calculation to be used by students, professionals, professors, lecturers, and for those professionals who want to see how to improve sustainability from the point of view of the impact associated to building processes. And in that tool, we will upload all the knowledge that we're going to find throughout these 2 years the project is going to last. We're going to see what the state of the art is during the following months through this online tool in order to calculate the CO2 emissions. Of course, on that online platform, all that information that's generated by us is going to be published so that anyone who's willing to have a look at it can do it. So, because the dissemination of results is an essential part of the project, so the platform has to be a reference tool. If those are the objectives, what are the products we're going to generate? First of all, we're going to generate some reports that are going to specify what the state of the art is in the field of construction processes, because we know, according to our prior experience, that there's a lack of regulation, a lack of information on how impacts associated to construction processes are assessed, and we need to share that knowledge. So the first task within this project is to compile all the different regulations in the European Union, existing in the European Union. It's true that we're going to focus on the countries that are partners in this project, but of course in the online platform, all the different regulations of the different EU countries is going to be available. So those people working on this field are able to download all those regulations to be able to understand what the situation is at the moment in the European Union. We also have to draft reports of the different countries. Each of the partners is going to draft their own report. And the second report that we have just started has to do with the environmental declaration of products. Environmental product declaration, sorry, EDP. As you know, professionals from the construction sector have to use them in order to contextualize what's the impact construction materials are having, because we can be using any material like concrete, for example. We know that has an environmental impact, but we don't know how to assess that impact. So the EDPs that have their own regulations in each different European country are the tool that is available to know the environmental impact associated to the manufacturing of a specific product, building product. EDPs are associated to companies. Companies are the ones who decide to carry out a specific EDP. So that EDP is associated to a specific building product, but that's a good reference to know the data that are associated to that specific product. So we have to know what EDPs are being issued in each different country and try to define a state of the art. In Europe, there's a big inequality regarding the field of EDPs. That's why we will have to share our knowledge, the different partners, and see how to start working. With that information and with some reports that we will have to develop regarding the calculation of CO2 emissions, we'll be able to see what are the tools available. For example, our research group is born in university, and we are familiar with these methodologies, and we'll see what are the methodologies available in Spain, for example. So knowing what are the calculation methodologies or the methodologies to calculate the CO2 emissions in Spain, for example, we will be able to unify and upload it to the online platform. So the calculation tool to calculate CO2 emissions associated to building materials have to be used by all the different partners. So we'll have to start from the same point so that we can start calculating emissions in building processes throughout Europe. This is something that's going to be uploaded to an open platform. So for those of you who are interested in having a look at the documents, you can have a look at it, and this can be used for reference purposes. Okay, now that I have contextualized the project, you can see the different partners. This is a project that's thought to share knowledge. We are 6 partners, 2 universities. On the one hand, the University of Seville. We are the main partner with Jaime Solís. I'm the coordinator myself and all my team. We come from the building engineering school. We participate with, or we collaborate with architects and engineers, and we've been working on environmental impact issues for many years. This is very focused on the field of measurements of the different building processes. So we are quite familiar with all these aspects. Another university that is associated to the project is the University of Brasov in Transylvania. So we'll be able to transfer all the knowledge to the university scope. And we also collaborate with 3 different technological centers. On the one hand, CTM from Spain, Fertimac from Italy, and the Technological Center for Ceramic and Glass in Coimbra. Collaborating with these centers will allow us to transfer knowledge to the professional field through the organization of different professional courses once the platform and the calculation tool is available. And collaborating with the University of Romania will also allow us, I don't know if you're familiar with the project that different countries, or the association that different countries are taking part in, working with innovation. But we're going to be working on how we can transfer those products to the field of innovation through this university. I'm not going to go into detail in this field. And these are the different tasks that we have to develop. And as I mentioned, the project lasts for 2 years. We started in September, and for 2 years we're going to be developing these tasks that the European Union has told us to develop. And throughout 2017 we're going to start developing the interactive tool so that we can start uploading all the contents. And we can start working in different fields. We're going to test these online tools with professionals and students to see what they think about it. This is the regulation, the different regulations, implementation level of those regulations. during the project, 2 different surveys are going to be used, distributed, one in the academic field and another one for professionals. And this is going to show if the project is going to be able to modify knowledge of people in those fields. In my case, students are going to fill in that survey, and they will fill it again 6 months later, and we'll see if they were able to get the knowledge arising from this project.
La segunda tarea que sería el estudio de las declaraciones ambientales de producto. Hacemos un primer análisis de lo que sería el estado del arte en cada país sobre los materiales y los procesos constructivos, por si hay discrepancias o por si hay diferencias entre ámbitos constructivos. Estamos hablando de que somos 6 socios.
With Spain, it's Portugal, Italy and Romania. Well, we're talking about 4 different countries and a lot of things in common. We need to study those building processes to see if they are different, if there are any differences in the point of view of the materials, and that can be useful for us in order to establish a starting point. With this information, we will upload it and then we will know what the situation is in every country. It's more or less the same in every country or not, and that is going to be one of the objectives. We're going to develop new methodologies, calculation methodologies. For example, in Spain, do we have the tools that define the CO2 emissions? Yes, they exist. For example, the Catalonian Technological Institute has a tool to assess CO2 emissions through the ITEC. I don't know if you are familiar with it. It's an institute which has a lot of tradition in the scope of CO2 emission calculations. But we could carry out a standard project through they carry out standard projects with a calculation tool. And that allows us to establish a budget for the project and establish the CO2 emissions for that project. What's the state of affairs when we take into account CO2 calculation methodologies? There are different tools in Spain. We will implement them and use them in the projects. But we also want to know what the situation is in different countries. That means establishing which are the tools which are available. If those tools are available to the public, if they are not available, we will need to create new information in order to upload it to into this platform. Because this project is a tool and we want this tool to be available for all of you. Also, we will also look at the carbon footprint, because in the scope of University of Seville, we have carried out different sorts of analysis, and we know there are different ways to approach the study of the impact related to building processes. As we know, there are different indicators, and we would also like to know what the situation is in different countries. If they work with carbon footprint, hydric footprint, there's different information there. So, last but not least, it's also important to analyze the materials, but bearing in mind the recyclability of a material, the ability or the percentage in which such materials are used. The information wouldn't be 100% correct. So we need each and every country participating in this project to upload information in this respect, so we know how we can complete this puzzle of materials in terms of reutilization, reuse and recycling. we also like to know how waste is managed, about waste management, and like I said before, this is very much related to the academic sector, but it's also very useful for professionals. And the fourth mandate, as far as these methodologies is concerned, is to develop a European curriculum. We would like to see what a pilot course looks like, so we can study this calculation methodology. So this pilot course, or this European curriculum, can also upload all this information. So this, for example, this pilot course, or we will offer professionals or academics, we will use all that information and upload it into the tool. So everything will be revised, of course, as long as while the project advances. So we will develop our own calculation tools, etc. This curriculum will be, of course, accessible for all of you when we develop it. So any company, any organization may want to develop this kind of experience, they can have a point of reference. The second objective would be the production of, or the creation of the online platform, with a web page, etc., which is of course available but has no information uploaded yet. We will upload all the information into the tool, and we will add all the information we can generate. And of course, it's a meeting point. This platform will be a meeting point in order to look for all this information. So when the project is finished, it will be a reference point. So anyone that may want to improve their knowledge, in relation to building processes and CO2 emissions, can enter this platform, visit this platform, see the kind of content, see how the platform works. If they want, they can transfer information. And if we think that, for example, if somebody uploads any sort of information and we deem it interesting, we can just then incorporate it to our platform. And of course, at the same time, we will be developing the tool to calculate CO2 emissions. And when this starts rolling, we will try to encourage everyone related to use this platform and to confirm if it's useful for them. Needless to say, dissemination, of course, is vital for this kind of projects. We will, of course, transfer knowledge and organize some seminars like this, courses of all sorts at university. We will, of course, start pilot experience in order to transfer knowledge in our subjects, in MAs, in PhDs, etc. One of our main objectives is that as many people as possible related to this sector, to this industry, can have access to this project, and it can modify their knowledge or complement their knowledge, we could say. We could see all the different tasks of the project. Like I said before, it's also important to bear in mind the knowledge transfer, and that, of course, we will have to organize different seminars throughout the project in Murcia and in other places, and we'll have 2 more seminars in Romania and in Seville. We also have a project meeting in Prensa, so everything that is generated in the project is transferred to the different agents. So we hope that when the project is finished in Seville, the tool is available and working, and the knowledge has been transferred correctly to everybody. And well, that's it. David is going to talk about the development of certain aspects of the project, and then after that I will explain a little bit about the methodology of calculation methodologies in Spain.
más desarrollado tenemos.
And we will use that as a starting point to see where the project is at the moment. So thank you very much. I'll give the floor to David. We'll carry on with the presentation. Right, I wanted to say, I forgot to say that this conference is being recorded, and the intention is that it will be uploaded to YouTube and our webpage. That's why the different things are going to appear in English as a common language, in order to be able to disseminate what's going on here and the different what the different speakers have to say. And what I'm going to explain now, I'm going to speak in detail the different tasks of the projects, not all of them, but just the part where we're at right now. And I wanted to give you a few examples of what we are doing, even though they're only mere drafts, but you can see where the situation is at the moment. The first task is to do a compilation of the regulations, what the different in the different countries. But the regulation focuses on the environmental aspects and is going to be useful for us in this project. That's the first part. On the other hand, like Jaime said, we also have to think of the level of awareness about sustainable materials in the professional scope. Surveys are going to show us different interpretations of the awareness level. We ask about the different materials, or what different materials you know or have you ever used. All this in the end becomes a kind of a statistic that will help us understand the level of awareness of the different sustainable materials in the market, and why, and what is the vision, or how the professionals see them, and why don't they use them if they don't. I think it's very interesting. This survey, well, I'm going to go by follow strict order. It's 112 and 113, which is an online survey aimed at professionals or academic related. So you can take the surveys there, and then 113 is a report about the level of acceptance. So I'm going to show you. I just chose the Portuguese example here, who have carried out this task, and as you can see, you can access directly with a link to the European regulation related, and you can have it in English as a common language, because you may have somebody from France who's not part of the project and who's interested in it. So we thought it was useful to do everything in English, because there are countries which are not represented in the project, but who may be interested in it, and we have to count on them as well. This is the example of the reports that you have with you, which has been uploaded to Google Drive. It's very easy to obtain statistics there and be able to compare them and obtain a report and have sort of conclusions. If you have 1,000 or 2,000 people taking the survey, you can see the value of that survey. We have almost around 300, because it's the usual figure for Erasmus projects. But if we manage to find a higher penetration for this, and maybe find other universities who are interested or different scopes, we will see if we can gather more data. This is based on a study, a British study, which was carried out only for 50 professionals, we want to be a little bit more ambitious. We wanted to be a bit more ambitious, and we also translated it to the academic sector. That's why I was talking about this. Both surveys are very similar, but you can't really ask exactly the same questions. Like I said before, there is a report about this seminar, and I wanted to include it here, even though it's included in the activity number 3. I wanted to to talk about this right now, which is a similar thing for academics, which is very much related. But as you can see, we are talking about awareness. We are interested in awareness for students and knowledge. If somebody doesn't have the knowledge, then it's okay. That's exactly what we want to do. We want to all this knowledge to permeate into society, and so that the students, the teachers, everybody is aware of this. And like Jaime said before, we want to go very much straight into the analysis of building materials. On one hand, each participant in the project will analyze throughout statistics and data taken from their national institutes of statistics, through scientific studies that they may have at their disposal. They will look for which are the more common building materials statistically which are used in the countries. So from those products, starting from those products, we will carry out a comparative analysis, and we will do this life cycle analysis or assessments, by which we may find out that there is a country who does not use a lot of sustainable materials and use a lot of bricks, for example, or vice versa. So we can take a look at these 2 tasks. First, to analyze which are the most common materials. It's not about showing a huge list of materials. That's not what it's about. What it's about is that the people, students, professionals who are in the platform, come into the platform, visit the platform, know, because we tell them where the information is. They don't need a huge list. We will create links to the information so they can access it, rather than giving them a huge PDF which will not really be that useful for them. Like we don't want to give them a fish, we want to give them the fishing rod. So they can learn by themselves how to analyze these things. And this is an example of a comparative analysis. This is where we will hopefully include a column with a direct link to the life cycle analysis. Jaime is going to explain a bit better than me, in more detail, where these analyses come from. For example, in Spain. And well, this is basically the presentation of the first tasks that we have introduced in the project. Normally, in the first meeting, we normally don't see so much information. First meeting is normally for people to get to know each other, but here, because this is a seminar, we wanted to include a bit more info and to explain a little bit more in a little bit more detail what's going on. The next presentation is related to curriculae. Well, I'm going to go a bit deeper into these 2 tasks. The curriculum belongs to intellectual output 1, the first work package. In each work package there are a series of tasks. In work package 1 we have everything related to all the analysis, all the studies. This will help us create that tool and develop a study plan. Study plan, I won't go into numbers and details, but we want to talk about it. But we need the course to be agile. It will need to have practical classes, theoretical classes. As for the CTM, we will offer a free course. It might be done twice, one for example for technical engineers and one for architects. We will see about that. But we will try to disseminate the project as much as possible. But it's not for sure. It might have 20 practical hours and 20 theoretical classes. And we will try to be very precise and very accurate. And in order to create a tool where architects and professionals can look, people need to know exactly where to look for information, and that's basically the main idea. So people have a tool that we have, where they can go for info. So every time they can build, they're going to start building a building, they can know exactly which materials are more sustainable, which materials are better for us. Maybe see to establish if a material is recyclable but not reusable, which is not exactly the same. So we need to establish that and determine that. Something that can be positive or negative, or good for you or bad for us, depending on the construction process or the building process. And all these things these things are the ones that we need to make the professionals aware of, because as you know, there are a lot of regulations or CO2 emission regulations that talk about the life cycle of a project, but only through the point of view of energetic efficiency. But we are talking about the building process here, okay? How much CO2 are we going to use in the manufacturing of building processes and in the construction process, etc. Okay? So this is the main difference here with respect to what the present day trends are. So basically, like I said, this is possibly going to be, we're going to have a study plan for professionals and for universities. And the platform is going to be basic in order to include all these contents. And I gave you an example here of a project that we carried out. Well, it's a PDF that I didn't know that I can open PDF files here. But it was just an example, for of course, professional. Oh, okay. It's for this kind of example is for professional education. Of course, universities will have bigger curricula and more means. The Romanian university, etc. But our next point is the development of this online platform, by which that has 3 tasks: creation of this platform, which is of course something that is that will never end, because we will keep feeding that tool regularly. We will be there is no problem. You can download all the contents, etc., and it will be developed constantly. And the important thing here about this tool is, okay, for example, the product lasts for 2 years, but we want our impact to be as big as possible, so we will get in touch with different associations, different universities related to construction and related to sustainability. Why? Because after the project is finished, we want this to keep going, to keep this alive, so we can keep feeding this tool. So any user can register in this platform in order to upload the information. Let's imagine there is a teacher with a group of students, and they they enter this tool in order to use it. So we can share different information with the students, because the teacher can upload his information and the students can download it. So, maybe we can look at that information after a couple of weeks and we will validate it, and then it will be present on the tool. So, what are we thinking of this? How are we, what is the structure going to be? This would be like the home page of the web page. We've just started, like I said. So, when you go in, you can see the home page, but there is no content. You cannot really go anywhere. Okay, it's not developed yet. But basically, the structure, like as a main thing, has these two parts. The top part, look at the top part that says home, project, methodology, etc. Reports. What are the reports going to be? Any sort of comparative studies, environmental studies, all the documents that we will have generated, all the different documentation is going to be there. It's going to be classified, because of course we will classify it. But we will place the links somewhere and videos somewhere else, and etc. EPDs that people may want to upload. But of course, the links will be there because they belong to whoever creates them. Well, we will need to have a clear idea of how to organize this information, so it's very clear for everybody that visits the. This is where the calculation tool is going to be, and of course it will have these three parts that you can see here. You will see some screen grabs, screenshots of latest news or latest documents uploaded onto the platform, or, for example, latest updates of the tool, because, of course, the tool has to be something organic. We may detect that there is an update in the analysis of a particular material. So if somebody downloaded a report 3 months ago, they might want the more updated report. So basically these are the first kind of brush strokes. In the next seminar this will be already have contents and have a fixed structure. People can enter it and download stuff. So possibly, because the next seminar is in a week. In a year, so in approximately a year. So this project should have a good, should progress at a good steady pace. So this is basically what we wanted to tell you about where we are at the moment. Jaime will speak more specifically about methodologies and calculation methodologies. People have already started studying in order to see how we need to explain the architects and how we have to make it very visual.
I just want to comment on EPDs. Now that I'm using these slides, these are the main aspects of the project. This is a K2 project. We started in September 2016 and we're going to finish in 2018. These are the different researchers from universities that are going to take part in the project. As I mentioned, we come from different architecture and engineering schools of the the University of Seville. I also wanted to comment our background. We are the coordinators of the project, the University of Seville, and we are already working on different research lines related to the environmental impact in building processes. 4 years ago, we started a project which is named Assessment of the Ecological Footprint in Housing in Spain. And what we did was to assess what's the impact the construction of housing creates at a national level using the ecological footprint indicator. Very briefly, this is an indicator that has the capacity to establish what's the amount of territory that we consume when we carry out any activity, and this had only been previously used to other activities, such as the assessment of countries, of cities, that is, or the world, that is how we are consuming our ecosystem. So with this project, and starting from a previous work, and that was the content of my PhD thesis, we started using this ecological footprint indicator. And within this indicator, one of the main impacts that we assessed is the carbon footprint. So with those two indicators, we can see that they are very closely related. So we were deeply researching on those two aspects. These generated some results, and thanks to them, together with other pieces of research that we carried out, another project started coordinated by my colleague, in this case just in the region of Andalusia, where we created a calculation tool to assess the impact with the ecological impact indicator and the carbon footprint indicator to see what the life cycle of a building was, and when it got to the end of its useful life cycle, if it was possible to establish a comparison between demolishing the building and building it again, or renovating it. So we created two different models, one of them where the building was demolished and rebuilt again, and another one where the building was renovated. This project is available, the results are available at the specific council, regional ministry of the government of the region of Andalusia, and most of you will say, of course, renovating a building has a lower impact, but what we did was establishing different situations, and in all the situations where we decided to renovate a building, maybe there can be any case where constructing a building again can be more profitable from an environmental point of view. So with this project, we were able to know the whole life cycle of a building, starting from the materials and the first steps of the construction process. But we also get to the stage of the recycling or reuse of the different materials. So as we have analyzed the whole life cycle of buildings, creation of project, building phase or stage, use of building use, and the final part of the process, with that analysis, we think a tool can be developed to sum up that impact. Together with this funding, some different PhD theses have been developed in the group. A PhD thesis that I developed since 2011 That was the result of the research project, the ecological and environmental assessment of building, not just the use from the point of view of the associated impacts of everyday use, but the renovation of the building, because there are a series of maintenance processes which were taken into account that my colleague Alejandro Martínez developed. The economic feasibility of the whole process was also researched. The e-tech in its calculation tool can establish or calculate the price of this environmental impact. We have enough information to for environmental information to be included. The practical thing is that in this case this tool comes from the regional ministry, so it's open for any user who wants to assess a building project. So that tool includes environmental information and can be used by any professional. No license has to be paid, and that's associated to that project. We know that we can incorporate that information. The project objectives were already introduced, and regarding EPDs, just for you to see what the situation is in Spain, we have created a summary of those EPDs. This is also a summary of what an EPD is. It's something that a company offers to any user to explain what the manufacturing process of that product is. So it's a way of explaining someone who is not familiar with the product what the impact that product can have on the environment. Of course, we're talking about the life cycle analysis, and that information has to be associated to the life cycle analysis. I want you to have a look at this slide and at another slide offered by David, that David showed you, because our team had a look at what are the bodies that are currently issuing EPDs in Spain, and this is the scenario. There are different companies and different associations that certify that EPD, because if you manufacture any building material, you've got different options to certify it. There are regulations, there are Spanish regulations, European regulations, and these different agencies are in charge of issuing a document incorporating environmental information. We've got a system, EPD system. This is a body that gathers EPDs from many different European countries, and it is in charge of evaluating the manufacturing process, the elimination process if necessary, and it establishes what the emissions are and what the impacts are. There's INOR, of course, which certifies EPDs. It not only issues regulations, but it also certifies products throughout their life cycle. As David mentioned before, what's the information we can upload to the online platform? We, as participants in the project, we cannot upload information that's already available in other platforms, but we can help that information being more visible. So we can include the links to those websites so that those EPDs can be found. So in case that information is available, of course, we cannot publish that information again as if it was ours. And that document, as they are related to specific features of the building process, those documents have a limited validity. So it makes no sense uploading information to the online platform that is not going to be valid in a few years, because it's going to be confusing for users. There are other bodies, such as ITEC itself, also develops models to create environmental budgets, so as to say. Also, OpenDAP, it is the the Institute of Catalonia. OpenDAP is a tool. It's being developed with a calculation tool. There are different experiences in Spain that we want to highlight, and we want them to be visible. And all this information will be uploaded to the platform so that it constitutes a meeting point. Also, GBC Spain, this body is associated to the international body itself, and it does not carry out EPDs itself, but it gets information from EDPs to obtain green certificates. I don't know if you're familiar with the types of certificates that can be issued in Spain from an environmental point of view, but the difficulties from the point of view of environmental certificates is that sometimes you have to incorporate information on building materials, and the person trying to find that technical information is going to have a lot of trouble. So this allows you to find that information and link it to that report, and therefore we'll be able to use it through our platform. And finally, this is a new procedure. This is the product environmental footprint that's being developed by the EU, because it wants to create a platform, an open platform, to be able to search or look for different environmental footprints, but it also incorporates all different types of information. There are just pilot experiences related to the indicator. No product has been properly certified. You can have a look at it at the EU website, but it allows us the possibility, it gives us the possibility of checking that information. I don't know if you're familiar with the ecological labels. At the European level, there's this ecological labeling, and this is something similar, so as to say.
Esta transparencia que ha comentado David.
This is the slide David was talking about. Here we can see a summary of what's the information that's necessary to make a comparison between the different types of EPDs, we thought that it is important, for example, the type of product. An EPD is created specifically for a product, not for a material. So you have to specify the type of product, the body that's manufacturing it, that is issuing it. As I mentioned, there are different bodies that issue that EDP declaration and how it has been verified. Here you can see that the body in charge of EDP or EPDs is different from the one that certifies that that EPD has been carried out according to a specific methodology. The EPD establishes what are the stages that are being assessed in that manufacturing process. So it's not the same for the EPD to be from cradle to the grave, and not it's not the same as being from cradle to the building site. So we have to check what's the impact that declaration includes. So the main aim of an EPD is for that information to reach the general audience or public to be familiar or know that impact. We said that that declaration has got a specific validity. Sometimes, and normally it's 5 years from the moment it is issued. Of course, this is not not all the information can be gathered on this table, of course, but it includes the information that we think is more important. There are many products that do not have EDP declarations at the moment. Is there an EPD for a specific kind of aluminium? This is something that we have to analyze. The regulations that have been applied. And of course, those regulations are going to be different according to the countries. We can have a very specific regulation, and maybe those regulations are not the same ones or very similar in the case of different countries. Maybe we can think that our partners have more information. Of course, we're going to share our knowledge, and in the end we'll add another column because we're going to include the result of those analyses and those comparisons. So we have to check what the situation is in Spain at the moment. In Spain there can be between 20 and 30 EPDs, but maybe in the future there are less because some of them have not been updated. So the important thing is for these EPDs to be followed up. What information can also be useful for the project? If we are talking about the fact that these two can give us information from EPDs, of course this information can be used for reference purposes. Of course, it has to be verified with databases we are already using. We are selecting that information, and all the partners will define what CO2 emissions associated to a specific material or slab, for example, is going to be. And I also want to mention from the point of view of EPD,
de las metodologías de cálculo, ¿de qué estamos hablando? ¿No? Es decir, de que,
What are we talking about when we mention calculation methodologies?
Que existen distintas herramientas.
There are different tools
Podemos hablar, por ejemplo,
for CO2 for calculating CO2 emissions. For example,
a nivel nacional,
at a national level, there are tools such as LEED, such as BREEAM, such as Verde,
que
others.
te daban certificación ambiental de edificio. Y
Some of these were tools to certify buildings,
asociadas a los procesos constructivos y
few,
a la fase de uso de
and it can calculate CO2 emissions in all the different stages of buildings.
Es más difícil de trasladar al trabajo que nosotros estamos realizando, pero también
These tools are difficult to adapt to a project, but we have to highlight if those certifications are also used in other European countries. The energy certificate that we are familiar with in Spain, we know there's a regulation that is linked to the European regulation related on energy efficiency. We already have all our tools, and this is well regulated in the case of Spain. When we are going to carry out a project and we try to calculate CO2 emissions, this is something that has not been regulated yet, because it is not compulsory according to law for our projects to incorporate CO2 emissions calculation. And I wonder, will that be compulsory in the future? Yes, of course. Because according to the European regulations, there will be a moment when when the European Union is going to create a piece of legislation to be transferred to the different European countries. And of course, if it is created, we will incorporate it to the project. So, we are only going to focus on the scope. Are there tools in Spain to calculate CO2 emissions generated in the building process? If the use stage is clear and we are able to determine emission ratios, of course, we will also be able to do it in different stages. These are examples of the different tools we use in Spain. The most popular one is the one developed by ITEC, and it incorporates information, environmental information, when you make your budget for a project. This is an image of the ARCO tool that I also mentioned before. It's related to the open tool of Rojas Institute opened up, and it makes a similar analysis. From your project, you establish your measurements, and the tool gives you CO2 emissions. The main difference between the different tools is what information they're working with, what costs they're working with. Some of them work with different banks. This is EREVEA. This is a tool that is not created for the whole process, but according to our project, it can be used. Sofia, that's another project. It's financed at a national level. It also develops the results. So our task is to share this information with our partners and to decide that information we obtain and we process which part of that information that we process and that we share is going to be uploaded to the information, so that whenever someone has a look at the platform, he or she can get all the information, as much information as possible, and apply to their project. Okay, that's all I had to tell you. I hope you have a fruitful session, and I hope the rest of the speakers give you very interesting information. And I invite you to, in the following months, to have a look at our platform, so that you can tell us if the project is interesting and if in the end the tool is interesting for your purposes. So thank you very much, and I hope this is an interesting day. Okay, there's some time for questions and answers.
Right. Right now, like I said, there is a catering service available, so we're going to take a little break if there are no questions, and then we'll carry on with the architects, which is going to be much more practical and of course even more entertaining, more fun, rather than the like the hardcore of the part of the conference. That's all from us, but we are at your disposal from the CTM, so if you have any queries, questions, even if they are related to the development of the project or any other business, you know, we're all here, you know, so all the parts involved in the project, and we have a big team behind supporting us for anything. So we're going to take a little break, and I'll see you at 11:30. Thank you.